Hello, Dread Mechanic here, and welcome back for some more Mechyard survival. In the last episode, we finished setting up the advanced mech warrior that you can see walking behind me, off in the distance, doing his little patrol route. We set him up with the docking station, and all of that kind of stuff, so he can now just wander around and do his own thing. And in this episode, I plan on starting some kind of offensive vehicle. Some kind of tank, perhaps. Because in the last episode, we took away one of the experimental missile silo things that I've been building. 2 was a little bit too many. So, we've now got this spare foundation here to play with. So, I think I might turn it into another docking station for some kind of think tank. So, we'll have a little think, funnily enough, and come up with some designs. But first I would like to say a quick thank you to my YouTube members, and I would also like to say thank you to my Patreon members, of which I've just received my first 2, so thank you to George Wilkinson, and thank you to 4Key2411. Okay, so there are quite a few enemy targets around the local area, and I want to start getting rid of them in some kind of serious way. So, let's have a think about building some kind of offensive vehicle. Now, we've got this old piston from our previous setup, so I think we can use this to our advantage. So if I raise that out of the ground a little bit, and leave that there for a moment, we can build an advanced rotor on the top of it, and we can use that as the beginning of some kind of new docking station. Let's add a medium head onto that one. Right, so that's the rotor. Now if we pull that back down into the ground a little bit, so I can reach the top of it, we can build a connector on top of that rotor, and then that will be able to feed into the conveyor system so we can refill the tank. Right, let's get those bits welded up, and then we will start thinking about what we're going to build. Okie dokie, so that is our connector built. Let's just colour that the same. Right, so we can build off that then. And I think we'll start with one of the large inset connectors to begin our mech. So let's get that welded up as well, and then we can connect it up to here. Right, that's welded up. And that is locked. Right, cool. We can start building off that then. Right, so first things first, we are going to sort out the beginnings of the docking connector for this mech before we get much further. So I'm going to put a few pieces in place, and then we'll start thinking about the actual overall design in a few minutes. Okay, so we've got a basic sort of skeletal structure of what I'm thinking of doing, and what I am thinking of doing is building a 6-legged multiped tank. So the next thing to do is going to be to add a few rotors onto the ends of these little outriggers, and then we will start welding some stuff up and then move on to the next stage. Right then, so that is all pretty much welded up. I thought I'd paint it a slightly brighter colour, because I know a few people have complained that the rust paint makes it a little bit difficult to see sometimes, so I've made it a nice bright white colour for now. So now we need to start thinking about some of the shaping and some of the detailing, and I'm thinking I want to have an internal cockpit on this thing, and I want it to be a little bit protected, so I'm thinking this time round I might make some underneath access, have a door here, and have a control seat up there, and then have this little cockpit section boxed in maybe. So we could have a seat there, we could have a door there, and that seat should be accessible from there. And then we can have some kind of cockpit thing set up there maybe. Okay, we've got a little bit more of the structure in place, and I've made a start on shaping the cockpit a little bit. I've slightly readjusted the seat to bring it a little bit more forward. And I've also started on some of the infrastructure with the conveyor system. All I've really got for now is a couple of reactors and a conveyor converter, but we'll get all of this stuff welded up, and then we will think about some of the programming and where we're going to put some of the computer parts. Okay then, so that is all of those bits welded up. I have made a little bit of a start on some of the arms I'm going to put on the front of it. I've just put a few placeholder rotors and hinges in for the moment. And I've also made a little start on a basic conveyor system. So we've got a little bit of ammo storage in the middle, and then we're going to have a conveyor route up to the arms, because they're going to have some Gatling guns on the end of them. And I'm thinking of sticking an assault cannon turret on the top of this thing, so that we can take out some enemy bases from a bit of a longer range. So yeah, we'll get these bits welded up now, and then we will move the whole thing up a bit and make a start on these legs. Okay, so we can open that door, we can get into that cockpit pretty easily. That all seems to work quite nicely. We've made a start on the arms, so let's get this piston out of the ground a little bit more, give ourselves some room, and we can start thinking about what we're going to do with these legs. Okay then, we now have a basic leg design. So we've got a rotor for forward and backward movement, we've got a hinge for up and down, we've got another sneaky little rotor in here for repositioning the foot when I want it to go into drive mode, and we've also got a remote control in there so I can set up some subgrid controlled braking. So all I've got to do is do that 5 more times, and then we can move on to doing a little bit of programming. Okay, right, that is the last of the wheels on the last of the legs. We now have 6 of them, they look alright. So, next step is to think about power. We're going to need some batteries on there. 2 small reactors isn't really going to be enough, and then we can actually think about how we're going to start programming it and where we're going to put the bits and pieces for that. Right, so I think we'll put a battery at the back so it's a little bit more protected, because we're probably going to be getting shot at face on, so we'll keep it at the back. And then I think on top of that battery we will make a start building the computer that is going to control all of the walk cycles and driving controls and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll have a timer in the middle that will be the core switch for all of our walking animations, and then we'll have a bunch of event controllers around it. And then these controllers will form the basis of the walk animation controls. And then we'll have even more event controllers, and these are going to be part of our forward and reverse walking controls. So we will have controllers for forwards, left and right, and we will also have controllers for reverse, left and right. Right, we'll get all these welded up, and then we will move on to the next layer. Okay, so now that we've got all of that welded up, we can place a rotor that is going to make the entire thing tick over. And then we're going to need a return controller either side to make the legs drop back down. And of course I need more interior plate. Why wouldn't I? And we will also need another event controller for our forward controls and our reverse controls. And then we can have a couple of timers down here at the side to start and reset our walk animations. Right, so now that we've got those bits in place, we should probably think about adding a few more bits of detail to the cockpit. So I'm going to put some custom turret controllers in there for our arms and our turret cannon we're going to build eventually, and then maybe something else. And then we will have a pair of lights in the front, and these are going to be the triggers for our walk animation. Okay, so that is the last of those bits for the moment. The only other thing we really need to do right now is we need to build a couple of thrusters so we've got some kind of control input. So for the moment I'm just going to put a couple of them as little placeholders at the back there for now, and one at the front. So we will have one for the reverse controls, one for the forward controls, and one with just a little bit of override so it doesn't make the whole thing freak out. Okay then, now that we have all those basic parts in place and welded up, I have named everything and got everything more or less ready to go and set up. Last thing we need to do is make a couple of groups to make this programming a little bit easier for ourselves. So we will make a group for the walk cycle event controllers. We'll make a group for the walk forward controllers. We'll do the same for the walk reverse controllers. So we will make a group for the leg hinges. So in this first group we'll have the front left leg, the mid right leg and the rear left leg. And we'll call that L01. And then we'll have an opposite group with the front right, mid left and rear right. Okay, so next we will make some groups for the leg rotors. So the first leg rotor group is going to be the front left and rear left leg. And we'll call that leg rotor L01. And then we will have the mid right leg, we'll call that L02 because we're going to have these groups both move at the same time. And then we will do the opposite for the right hand legs. So the front right and rear right. and the mid left. And then we will also make a group for all of the suspension blocks. And the reason I've set it up with all these different groups is mostly because it helps keep the programming a little bit more condensed, and in the event of something getting blown up or needing replacing, we can then just add that part to the group and it will automatically be added to the controls, rather than having to sift through timers and event controllers and replacing individual blocks. So now we've got that all set up, we can work on the programming itself. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to set up the walk controllers, which is all of these ones here. So these first four, the walk forward and walk reverse controllers, are going to be triggered by those lights turning on and off. So we will set them to block switched on and off. And then we will have the left controllers respond to the left light and the right controllers respond to the right light. So then, this first controller, forward L01, that first leg rotor group we set up for the left hand side, we are going to set it to -10 when the light turns on, and we are going to set it to 10 RPM when the light turns off. And then with L02 we will do the opposite, it's on the opposite side. And if I add that light to my toolbar, when I turn it off, the legs move back, and when I turn it on, the legs move forward. And then the next thing to do is to move the legs up and down as they move forward and backward. So we will take leg hinge group L01, and when the light turns on, we will set it to -10, and when the light turns off, we will set it back to 10 RPM. Now when I turn that light on and off, the leg lifts up and drops down, and lifts up and drops down. Then we can move on to our walk return L01 controller. Now this one is going to be triggered by the angle of the leg hinge. So we will set it to rotor hinge angle, and we will select our front left, mid right and rear left leg hinges. And when those hinges get to less than -35, it will then trigger the leg hinges to return to 10 RPM. There we go. As the leg moves forwards, it now drops back down, so we can contact the ground when the leg pulls back again. And now we can do the same thing with the right hand controllers. So we will go to forward R01, select actions, leg rotor group R01, when the light turns on will be 10 RPM, and when the light turns off it will be -10 RPM. Then it will be the opposite for R02, so it will be -10 and 10, and then with the leg hinges we will set it to -10 when the light turns on, and 10 RPM when the light turns off again. Now our right leg setup can move up and down and forward and backward, and now we just need to set up the return controls. So, like the other return controller, it will be rotor hinge angle, less than -35, and then we will select our front right, mid left and rear right leg hinges, and when that event controller is triggered, it will set the velocity on those hinges to 10 RPM. And now, if we flick that light on and off, that leg can take a step, and if we flick the other one on and off, that one can take a step. So now what we need to do is sync them up like that. So the first thing we're going to do is going to go to the walk cycle timer, that will be the core of the entire thing. And all this really needs to do is turn these two lights on and off. Then we can go to our walk cycle controllers, and we will set all of these to rotor hinge angle. And then we will just offset each one of these by 90 degrees. So the first one can be set to 10, Second one can be set to 100. Third one can be 190. And the last one can be 280. And then the trigger for all of these is going to be the walk cycle rotor that we built. And so, when that rotor spins round to each of these preset angles, these event controllers are going to trigger that walk cycle timer. And now that we have that timer set up, if we trigger it manually, we can now cycle the entire walk animation with a single button press. And if we apply some RPMs to this rotor, we can trigger the entire thing automatically. And so as that rotor spins round, it triggers all of these controllers here, which triggers the walk animation. And to make the whole thing stop again, all we need to do is turn off that rotor. Right then, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to sort out these walk start and walk reset timers, because I want the leg animation to be able to start itself up and reset to a default position automatically. So we will start with the walk reset timer. So when we reset the walk animation, first thing we'll do is turn off the walk cycle controllers. We will also stop the walk cycle timer and turn it off, and we will also turn off the walk cycle rotor. And then we will turn both of the walk lights on and off as a little fail-safe. And then we are going to need to make a few more groups to reset our legs back. So we will take the front left rotor, the mid right rotor, and the rear right rotor. We will call that reset L01. And then we will do the opposite with the front right, mid left, and the rear left. And we'll call that reset R01. And so if we go back to our walk reset timer, we will set reset 01 group to -10 and reset R01 group to 10 RPM. And we will also do the same with the leg hinges. And now if I trigger that timer, it should put everything back into a default position. And then for our walk start timer, we just need to turn on the walk cycle controllers and turn on the walk cycle timer. And then we will turn off and on the left light and on and off the right light. So we can offset them and get them ready to go. So now if I trigger that timer, the legs set themselves up, ready for the walk animation, and if I turn the rotor on, the whole thing cycles round. And if I hit the reset timer, it all goes back to default. And if I trigger the start timer again and turn on the walk cycle rotor again, the whole thing will start up again. And now that we have all of the bits and pieces for our forward walking animation set up, we can now program the actual input controls. So we will go to our walk control forward event controller. We will set it to thrust output greater than 10%, and we will select our walk control thruster. And the first thing that this event controller is going to do when it's activated by that thruster is it is going to turn off the reverse walk controller, so we can't accidentally activate both of them at the same time. And then the next thing it'll do is turn on and off our left and right forward walk controllers. We will then trigger walk start when the thruster activates and trigger walk reset when it deactivates. And then we will turn the walk cycle rotor on and off. So now when I hit the forward thruster, the walk cycle triggers and starts to cycle around. and when I let go of the keys, it resets itself back to default. And one more thing that we need to do for this forward walk animation, we need to adjust some of the suspension settings. So we're going to stick the steering angle all the way up to maximum. We're going to set the strength to about 15 for now. We'll set the friction down to 25, and we'll put the speed limit about 50 for the moment. And so another command that I want to add to the forward walk controller is when the forward walk controls activate, I want the suspension blocks to all angle round a little bit to improve the traction. So we will set the steer override to 100%, and we will set the steer override to 0. Now, because all of these wheels are on subgrids, they all think they are set up in the default way, so they are all pointing the same direction. So for all of these right-hand ones, I need to set the invert steering on, so they point the opposite way. Now, when I activate the walk animation, all of the wheels pitch round into a position that greatly improves the traction when this thing is going to be walking around. And when I let go, they all default back to 0 again. And now that we've set up the forwards controls, we can do the same for the reverse controls. So we can go on to controller reverse L01, and then we can set this controller up almost exactly the same way as the forward one. We're just going to use opposite values for some things. So leg rotor L01 will be 10 and minus 10. L02 will be minus 10 and 10. Leg hinge L01 will still be minus 10 and 10. And then we can move on to reverse R01. So R01 group will be minus 10 and 10. R02 will be 10 and minus 10. And then leg hinges R01 will also be minus 10 and 10 RPM. We don't need to do anything with the return controls because they are going to work exactly the same way. All we need to do now is set up our reverse controls. So once again, our walk control reverse is going to be triggered by thruster output greater than 10%. It will be looking at our reverse thruster, and for this one, the first thing we will do is turn off and turn on the forward walk controller. Then we will turn on and off the reverse walk left and right controllers. We will trigger walk start and trigger walk reset, and then we will turn the walk controller rotor on and off. And then the final thing we need to do for our reverse controls is set the steer override on the suspension to minus 100 and 0. And now when I hit the reverse thruster, we can walk backwards, and when I release the button, it defaults back to normal. And if I hit forwards, we now switch into forward walk controls. So we can now freely switch between forward and backward at the press of a button. And now that we've got the walk cycle controls set up, we should probably build a couple of gyroscopes to control our mech with. And to assist with the overall balance of the mech, I'm going to build a rotor on the back with a gyroscope on top. And then we'll get all of that welded up. Okay then, with this rotor, first of all we will set shear inertia tensor on, We will set both of the limits to 0 so it can't move anywhere. We'll increase the torque a little bit, and then with the gyroscope we will set the override controls on. That way, with share inertia tensor on, it will share that gyro override controls across this entire grid, and that should help it stay a little bit more stable. If we need to add more gyros and more rotors, we can do later on. Okay, so I think I am going to add a little bit more armour to the back of this mech, and then we will give it a little bit of a test run. Right then, I think we will give this thing a little bit of a test run. So if I switch the lock on that, and if I drag that piston all the way back down again, so we've got a bit of clearance, we can climb into that cockpit. And there we go, we are walking. We're pretty stable. I think we might need to add a few more gyroscopes. But we can walk forwards. I think I'll tweak the walk cycle to be a little bit quicker as well. But we can walk forwards. And we can walk backwards. I think I need to make those leg hinges a little bit stronger as well. Right then, well that's a good start for our new multiped tank. We've set up the forward walk controls, we've set up the reverse walk controls. You can walk pretty well after doing our little test. We need to make a few more tweaks to the control setup, make it a little bit quicker and a bit sharper. So, I think next time we will come back and we will set up some drive controls and then set up some weapon systems. So, thank you for watching and goodbye for now.